this is a video that I have gotten requested to film for quite a while, probably since I had Addison, and I honestly haven't not filmed it for any other reason other than I just kept forgetting. But recently somebody asked me to do it again, and I think it's a great time now because I am expecting and I'm nearing the end of my pregnancy, and it's just going to be fun to kind of see the differences in him versus Addie, and just to see how I change as a parent, or if I change. But I think a lot of these topics are good to talk about, and I think a lot of people don't talk about them because they are controversial or uncomfortable. Obviously these are just my feelings, my opinions, what I've done, what works for me, what I believe in. It's not going to be everybody's opinion. I know everyone's not going to agree. I've watched a lot of other of these tags, and I often don't agree with their parenting styles or decisions, but that's the beauty of it. Everybody is different, everybody believes different, everybody does what works for them different, and this is just me. So I hope I'm not going to offend anyone or raise any arguments about this. This is just what works for me. Everyone can raise their kids how they want. Everyone experiences different things. Everyone was raised a certain way, and some people's parenting styles may be a reflection of how they were raised or completely different from how they were raised for whatever reason. So I just hope that you guys watching this will keep an open mind to the fact that this is just me. This is not what I recommend you do, what I will judge other people on. Like, I just hope that this will be a very laid back video and positive, sense that we can just all, as moms, respect one another's doings as parents, because there's no rule books and everybody's different, and I think that's kind of what makes life beautiful and what makes kids different. If we all did the same thing, raised our kids the same, and our kids all acted the same, it'd be a pretty boring world. So let's jump in. Number one is pro-life versus pro-choice, and I've always kind of been in the middle. I'm really not for abortion unless it's in certain situations like rape or incest. I don't like to hear when people use it as birth control. Oops, I got pregnant and I'm not ready or willing or able or want this, and they result in abortions. I feel as though if you are responsible enough and old enough to be sexually active, then you should be responsible and old enough, mature enough to handle being a parent, because that's kind of what happens. Don't think that it is okay for people to just run out and get abortions because they had sex and got pregnant by accident. There's ways to prevent it, but like I said, in the event of a woman being raped or incest, something like that, I definitely, as a woman, think that it's important for us to be able to decide that for ourselves if it's something that we're not comfortable with. Baby wearing, I'm not really sure why this is controversial or exactly what this means. I never wore Addie a lot, like I held her a lot, but I actually never even owned like an Ergo or anything like that. I did have one of those Solly baby wraps, and I would wear her on me when she was young, like an infant, when I would be vacuuming or washing dishes and I just needed my hands free. I actually don't ever even recall a time that I would bring that places and wear her. I would always just have the car seat or carry her. I don't think there's anything wrong with baby wearing. I think as an infant, I'll say up until they're about maybe 6 months old, I don't think there's anything wrong with holding your child a lot or wanting to wear them. They're babies and they need you, and they need to feel you and feel affection, and it's almost impossible when your child is that small to not want to hold him or her all the time. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't know, I always felt like those apparatuses were really big and bulky, and I had her in May, so the last thing I wanted to do was be having like all this extra weight in the heat. So I never did, but I mean, do whatever works for you. I feel like maybe now with this child, I will probably still not getting an Ergo. I have my Solly wrap. I might utilize it a little bit more just because I'm more active with Addie, like going places and taking her places that I might want to have my hands free. So I'm not opposed to it. Circumcision, we will be having this little boy circumcised. That's just a decision that Dan and I made together. I don't know if that's all I'm gonna say about that. I don't, again, know why that should be controversial. It's the parents' decision. Adoption. I would be totally open to adoption. I think adoption is a beautiful thing. I think it takes a special person, a special couple to open their hearts to somebody else's child and love them and raise them as their own. There are so many children that need a good home and need a loving family, and if you can do it, if you can open your hearts to it, I think it's an amazing thing. I would love to adopt one day, just for the sake that I feel like I could offer a child a good and stable home. So I love the idea of adoption, and I would totally be open to it. Baby piercing. I actually pierced Addison's ears when she was 6 months old. Mine were pierced when I was 3 months old. I'm 32 and I'm not mad at my parents for piercing my ears. I've just grown up always wearing earrings to where now if I don't wear earrings, I feel almost naked. Addie's 4 and she loves wearing earrings. She loves having a little earring collection. She's never wanted to take them out. I did it when she was young for a couple reasons. One, so where she's not gonna remember that it was painful or remember the experience, and two, more importantly, she was too little to be tugging at her ears or playing with them, and I was able to clean them and twist them and do all of that while she was so young and it not being a problem. I do have friends now with little girls Addie's age who are just wanting to go get their ears pierced, or their daughters are asking to have their ears pierced, and they're really nervous because it might cause them pain, and they're scared to do it now. So I don't regret doing it. I don't know, my parents pierced my ears and I'm really happy that they did, and I don't think that she's ever going to be mad at me or wish that her ears weren't pierced, especially with the way she's growing up to be quite the little fashionista and girly girl. She always loves her jewelry. Breastfeeding versus formula. Now this I know is a controversial topic, and it makes me really upset because it shouldn't be. I breastfed Addison until she was 14 months old, and I always said my goal was 6 months. If I could get to 6 months, I would be really happy. 6 months turned to a year. I loved breastfeeding, and the only reason I stopped was because my supply just kind of dwindled, but she never had formula. I enjoyed breastfeeding. I saw benefits with her. She was not sick for her first entire year. Like, we were never at the doctor. She never was sick. I feel like it really helped boost her immune system. It was convenient. Do it anywhere, anytime. I really liked it. And when she turned a year old, my doctor gave us the green light that she could switch to whole milk. So we did switch for a little, but it was funny because I was getting up in the mornings, going downstairs and warming up some milk for her. And after a while, I just thought, like, why am I doing this? Like, I still have milk. Why wouldn't I just let her nurse? So I did that, and then at 14 months is kind of when my supply started going down. Then she was completely fine, and she kind of self-weaned. I didn't really have to wean her too much by then. She was really only, I think it was just like a comfort thing. I would do it in the morning and at night. It wasn't really throughout the day. She was completely on like table food and getting all of her nutrients from food, yogurts and dairy, things like that. So I loved it. I can't wait to breastfeed again. I loved the bond that it created. But on the flip side, if I can't breastfeed for whatever reason, if I have a struggle, I know other friends of mine have had their child wasn't able to breastfeed because there was something in their milk that was giving them a reaction, or their milk just never came in. A cousin actually struggled with it. She had a C-section and her milk never came in, and she really beat herself up about it. And I just know for me, I try to keep an open mind, because if it's something that I physically can't do because my body's just not doing it, I am very open to formula. I was formula fed, my brothers were both formula fed, and we turned out fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I just loved the bond, and I loved the convenience of breastfeeding, and I hope to be able to do it again, but if I can't, don't judge other mothers for not breastfeeding. People just do what they can do and have their own reasons for it. Spanking. I've never spanked Addison. I don't believe in it. Personally, I just feel like I could not physically put my hands on my child like that, and I know a lot of people do it. We were never spanked as kids, but we were always threatened with the wooden spoon. That was always our thing. My little brother and I, we would hear I could hear my mom like, I'm gonna get the spoon, and I would hear the drawer open where the spoons were kept, and we would just take off. We never were spanked by the wooden spoon, but it was always a threat, and it was always very effective, just the threat in and of itself. My mom got the belt. She grew up with 5 other siblings, and they were spanked with the belt. And back then it wasn't, you didn't go to jail. Child Protective Services wasn't called. That's just how they disciplined. My mom grew up in a very loving home. She doesn't have animosity towards her parents for using the belt. So people, again, do what they do. I have friends of mine who do spank their children. I don't judge them for it. And I feel like there's other ways for my child to discipline her. Co-sleeping. I never co-slept with Addison. I wanted to. I would have loved to have her next to me in my bed, especially because I was breastfeeding, but I didn't trust myself. I was always scared that I would roll on her, or I would have the blankets cover her. You're in a deep sleep, sometimes you don't even realize what's going on, and I was just so frightened and afraid that something would happen while I was sleeping. She did sleep right next to our bed for 5, almost 6 months before she was moved into her nursery and her crib. But again, I mean, people do what they do. I don't judge people for co-sleeping. I have friends and cousins who have co-slept and now have a really hard time getting their children out of their bed. That's kind of why I'm glad I never did it, because I've heard their struggles of now getting their kids out of their bed. Like, I have friends whose kids still sleep in their bed and they're like 4, 5, 6 years old. I don't know. I'm with my kids all day, and at nighttime I just would like a little bit of a break. So I'm kind of glad that I never did it, and it's not like a habit I have to break now, but I understand totally why people do it, especially when they're so young and we're sleep deprived and it's convenient because we're nursing. Just the fear of like what could happen when I'm sleeping was just too much for me. Homeschools, public school, or private school? So I went to public school. My brothers both went to public school. Louis is currently in public school. He has 1 year of middle school left, and then he goes into high school. And we kind of gave him the option if he wants to go to the private school near us or stay in the public school. He's very into basketball, so we want him to go where he's gonna be able to play and have a good experience, both with basketball and school. So that's why we're leaving it up to him. I don't really feel one way or the other strongly. Again, I have friends that have kids in private school and swear by it and love it and think it's the greatest thing. I had a really great experience through public school. I just don't, at this early on, like young, like elementary, I don't know that there's that much of a difference. Maybe as they get older and you want to have them more prepared for college, I could totally see it, but for this early on, we're just gonna keep them in public school. Dan actually did go to private school his entire 12 years. He went to private school, and while I think you would always expect your experience at private school to be a lot better or prominent, I don't know the word, he told me some stories and some things that were going on in his high school that like mortified me, that we did not experience in my public school. So I feel like from a standpoint of where you think you're getting a better education or a better experience, I don't always think that's the case, just because I heard it firsthand. That was not the case for him. It's kind of funny though, because it changes. Like this high school that I went to, has kind of gone downhill. I hate to say it, that I wouldn't even feel comfortable with my kids going there at this point. And the private school that he went to, he does not want our kids going to. So I don't really know. I just think we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Like I said, for Louis, we're giving him the option, not the private school that Dan went to, but another one. We just want him to be happy. And I think private or public, I think he's gonna get a great education regardless of which school he's at, just based on the school district that we're in and the option of private school that we have close to our house. So I don't know, I think that's a really tough call. I think it's a really tough call. It depends on the school district in your area. I think it depends on the schools, the curriculums. Homeschooling, I could never homeschool. I just know my personality, and I don't know. It's almost like the whole working from home thing, like you have to really be diligent about your time management, and I just feel like it would be really difficult to do that with kids. I just don't think I have the discipline, enough discipline to be mom and teacher. And also I think it's important for kids to have good social life and social base, and by homeschooling them, I feel like they would be missing out on experiences like the dances and the football games and the pep rallies. Like, I would want my kids to have those experiences because I had those experiences, and those are some of my favorite memories from school. So I think I would be really sad if they missed out on things like that. Vaccinations. We do vaccinate. I, as most of you know, used to work at a pediatric rehab company, so I've heard it all about autism and the effects of vaccinations, and they've been debunked to me personally so many times by so many pediatricians, and just for my own research, that I do not believe that vaccinations cause autism or any other kind of challenges in kids. So I've always been pro-vaccinations. I feel safe having them vaccinated, knowing that they're not so susceptible to bad things that could happen. Knock on wood, Addie never had any adverse or allergic reactions to any of her vaccinations, and we will be doing the same thing with this child. And I just kind of go on the schedule that my pediatrician recommends. I love my pediatrician. I trust him wholeheartedly. I did have conversations with him early on about vaccinations, and I love that man. Like, I love my pediatrician like he's like my second dad. So when he would say to me, this is what I would do for my kids, or this is what I have done for my kids, I just trust him. So that's kind of just that's just where we go. Medicating children. I personally don't like to take medications myself. I just don't like the idea of having to take chemicals or having those things in your body unless you absolutely need to. Like, I am pretty stubborn. Like, I'll endure pain for so long until I can't anymore. I'm kind of like that too with my daughter. My doctor too is very conservative. He's not homeopathic doctors, but he's just very conservative. So he always has us trying like the more natural things before they're prescribing us things. He's only ever had to take or been prescribed things, I think, on 2 occasions. And on those 2 occasions, she threw up the medication. She's not a good medicine taker. I prefer to not have to, but if something was wrong, if she was really sick, I would never withhold medication. As far as other things like ADD, ADHD, and things like that where there's medication for, I really just think it just depends on the situation. I could not sit here and say I would never medicate my children, or I yes would medicate my children. I just feel like it would depend on the child. If it's interfering, how much it's interfering with their daily activities and day, if it's affecting their happiness, I probably would not want to, but I would be open to the fact that I might have to, and I'm okay with that. Cloth versus disposable diapers. I use disposable diapers. I would have liked to use cloth, and I did consider it before Addie was born, but convenience of having disposable diapers, especially being out and about and not having dirty diapers hanging around in your bag, just not for me. I know that there's nasty crap and chemicals in diapers, and I don't love them for that, but it's again like what worked for us, and I think what I will continue to do. Major kudos if you cloth diaper your child. I just feel like that is a huge job in and of itself. Cry it out method. I have a book that I read. I'll link it in the description box because I'm blanking on the name. It was a book that I read before she was born, and I think it really helped me with getting her to sleep without having to resort to the cry it out method. She was a great sleeper. From 6 weeks until 4 months, she slept through the night. Then at 4 months, she hit this regression, which I guess is a thing I found out, and she was still getting up. Only just like one time to nurse around 4:30 in the morning. By 8 months, she was still getting up at 4:30, and the other problem was she was not going down neither for a nap or for bed without being nursed. I remember when I went to New York for the Rachel Ray show, my brothers watched her for me, and I felt terrible because she would not nap for them the entire day, and I was gone from like 6 in the morning, and I don't think I got back until like 4 o'clock, and she would not go down for them at all. They ended up having to like push her around my house in her stroller to get her to sleep, and I think that's when I was like, something's gotta give, because not that I have her with other people often, but if God forbid that happens or I'm not around, like, she needs to be able to take her naps and go to sleep without my boob. So that's when I started talking to my pediatrician, and I'll never forget, he said to me, well, wouldn't you wake up if you could every night at the same time for a gourmet meal? And I said, yeah, I probably would. And he said by that point, 8 months, she was getting enough to sustain herself through the night, and she was purely waking up just because she wanted to nurse and not because she was like hungry or needing to. So he suggested trying the cry it out method, and we did it, and it was very hard, but I'm really glad that we did. It only took us like 2.5 nights. The first night, she went on and on for like 2 hours straight, and we would go in like every 20 minutes and just try to rub her back and tell her it was okay and comfort her, and stubborn little thing went on for 2 hours. And then the next night it went down to like 1.5 hours. And the following night, she was completely asleep, self-soothed, put herself to sleep, and slept through the night again. Those nights felt horrible. I remember I even had to like practically sit on Nick from going in there because he was so like, he didn't like hearing that, and I didn't like either. But I also was, she has to learn to do this because I wasn't nursing her as frequently as I was. It can't be where she's so dependent on nursing. So I'm really glad that we did it. Obviously she's not scarred for life by it. It felt like I was scarring her for life at the time, but it gave us our sanity back and it gave us our sleep back, and I think the more sleep we got, the better parents we were, just because we were clear-headed and a lot in a better mind frame and not like running on fumes. I've encouraged my friends that have struggled with it to just try it, but I know how hard it is. Scheduled feedings versus feeding on demand. Again, I think it depends on the age. I pretty much fed on demand, I'd say up until she was, I don't know, 4 to 6 months old. Because I was nursing, because I had never done it before, and you really can't tell how much they're getting, I would just feed her when she was hungry. And then I think we kind of started having more of a schedule that I wasn't like regimented in trying to make a schedule. It just kind of happened that way. And then it just kind of stuck. But I think early on, like putting them on such a regimented schedule is going to be really tough because they're so little and they don't understand. They just know to be hungry and cry when they're hungry. So it just kind of depends on the age. But as she got older, we're definitely on more of a routine, which worked for her too. She never really fought me on it, or I don't remember a time where she ever was like wanting to nurse and I would tell her no. But again, it was like when she was younger that it was more on demand, I'll say, than scheduled. Extended breastfeeding. Like I said, I fed Addie past a year. And if I had enough milk and I could have went longer, I would have. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And I even hate this topic because I just feel like, who are we to judge what other moms want to do? The effects of breastfeeding are also positive, and if it's working for you and your child, like, who am I to judge? If you want to breastfeed your child when they're 3 or 4 years old, like, that's you and your child. I don't really, I don't know, that's just what works. If I could, like I always would tell people, if I could have went longer with Addie, I would have. I probably would have breastfed her until she was 2, just because it was not a big deal and the effects that she was getting were great. So we'll see how long it goes with this little boy, and I'm gonna remain very open-minded to the fact that I might not be able to breastfeed him as long as I did her. Also didn't have another child to take after and run after, so I'm a little nervous about how that's gonna go, but I would like to think that I'm gonna nurse him as long as my body will allow me to. I think those are all of the questions. I really hope you guys enjoyed, and if I did not offend anyone, I hope there will be more, if anything, open conversation, open dialogue in the comments, and not like arguing, because why? That's just unnecessary. But thank you guys for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you later. Bye.